All right, good afternoon. It's 1:30 now, and it's time for the Tech Talk Show with Kazim. So today I have Peter the Tender with me on the show, and we're going to be discussing Microsoft Azure, the infrastructure and the platform backbone of Office 365. So Peter is a Microsoft Cloud Platform architect and a technical writer as well. Peter used to be a Microsoft MVP before joining Microsoft, and I know Peter is extremely passionate about training and speaking as well. So Peter, you're very much welcome on the show this afternoon.
Thank you, Kazim. I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for the invite and the nice introduction.
Yeah. I guess there are a few things that I'm missing out, so I'm going to allow you to do that real quick again. Reintroduce yourself, and then we can delve right in.
Sure. So my name is Peter, based out of Belgium, and I'm currently working for Microsoft internal as an Azure technical trainer. So what we do is assisting larger partners and customers all over the world, but I'm part of the West European team. So we cover EMEA as a region, delivering Azure workshops. And before that, I was running my own business as an Azure trainer and architect. So the job is somehow still similar, but it's, as a blue badge now, as they call it. So still super excited. And as you mentioned, I also wrote some books in the past about Azure, and I'm still working on some new ones. So you definitely will find some new material the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Peter, for that introduction. So we're going to delve right in now. So I want to ask Peter, what exactly is Azure and what is O365, and how do we connect between the two? Usually on the show, we don't like to assume anything. There'll probably be some people listening, and it's probably the first time they are listening to O365 or perhaps Azure. So what is Azure? What is O365? And what's the relationship between the two?
Okay, cool. So what Azure and O365 are, Microsoft Cloud technologies. So what it means is that instead of deploying everything yourself, so running your own servers in your own data center, you would just consume a service that's running in an Azure data center. So before, I would say public cloud became popular as a buzzword. We already used external hosting providers to provide compute services. And Azure is a lot similar to that, but obviously a lot bigger because it's present all over the world. I think we made some new announcements only a few weeks ago where we're going to open up data centers in Italy and Poland in the next coming weeks or months. So it's just a public announcement there. Now, if you look at the high level difference between using Azure and using Office 365, the capability in Azure is really offering you a data center service. So if you want to run virtual machines, if you want to build virtual storage, you would do that on Azure. If you want to host your own applications, like running a web application, a website, or a SQL Server database or MySQL, because obviously we're not only supporting Microsoft technologies. If you have a Postgres database, you could run that as well. That would all be on the Azure side. So simplified, it's not 100% correct, but simplified, it means that whatever you run today in your own data center, you're going to move it to an Azure data center. But you still control the application, the code set, the database. That's all your responsibilities. Then on the other side, Office 365 is a cloud-based connection. So you're not managing the servers, you're not managing the application, but you're going to use Exchange Online, for example. It's part of Office 365, so it's 100% the same than running your own Exchange mail server, but you're not running it yourself anymore. You're just going to configure the the users, the email addresses, the groups, the email security. So a lot of the data center fabric that you typically would build and manage yourself has now been moved to this shared platform. Other components in Office 365 is SharePoint Online, 100% same as running your own SharePoint infrastructure. And then Teams, one we're actually using right now for having the call. That's the other one that's also offered. And outside of those three main ones, there's a lot of other things. You got Microsoft To Do, so it's like a to-do app in the cloud that allows you to combine a lot of different tasks as a reminder for yourself, and then obviously integrating with other parts of the platform. Another big one that's been becoming more and more popular is Power Apps, and that's a component that allows you to actually build powerful workflow-based scenarios. Like if you want to automate an expense app, or if you want to run document recognition, storing it in SharePoint based on a workflow, but you don't need to be a developer to use that. So that's another pretty cool component of Office 365 that, based on a license, you can just connect to it, use it, and literally start consuming it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So another question is this. I know we can't talk about cloud without knowing about identities. So can you help us understand what identities are?
Sure. So an identity is what you use to authenticate towards an application. So taking Outlook as an example. So when you connect to Outlook.com, you need to identify yourself, and it means you need some kind of user account. Now, any cloud application or application in general is always relying on an identity. So in your own data center, you're probably familiar with Active Directory, so the Microsoft identity solution that allows you to create your corporate users and groups. Now, when moving to cloud scenario, you still need the same identity. So what we offer out of Azure is Azure Active Directory, and it's similar, but it's not 100% the same. But if you look at it outside of like Azure or Office 365, if you connect to Facebook, for example, you need a Facebook user account. So that's an identity. If you connect to Twitter, you're going to use a Twitter account. If you connect to Dropbox, you're going to use a Dropbox account. Now, one of the other nice things that you have with cloud is that a lot of the cloud vendors or cloud applications are using the same cloud-based identity protocol, and that's OpenID Connect. That's the protocol they use. And that allows you to have a single sign-on concept. So it means that you can authenticate with one single user account and using the different cloud solutions. So if you have Azure Active Directory, because you use Office 365, they're pretty depending on each other. It means no Office 365 without Azure Active Directory. But it also means that once you have your Azure Active Directory account, so let's say in my case, I log in with peter@microsoft.com, I could technically reuse my same Microsoft account, my Microsoft ID, to connect to Facebook, to Twitter, to Dropbox, to other cloud applications. And that makes your life a lot easier as well. It's just one single user account you need to remember that gives you access to all different cloud applications.
Okay. So sometimes people wonder if identity is such a big deal in the cloud. How does Azure help protect? How does Azure help secure these identities?
Okay, so I know we only have about 20 minutes, and I can talk about this for like probably 20 hours.
Yes.
But well, no, it's a valid, very valid question. So first of all, since Azure is pretty popular, like a lot of other cloud tools, but easy said, it means that out of Microsoft, we have a really good view on what's happening in the world. So taking an easy example, if you're working somewhere from a public Wi-Fi hotspot and you want to connect to your corporate Office 365 or Azure or your corporate applications, then that's all fine. You're going to authenticate Azure Active Directory and you're connected to it. Now imagine that from the same public Wi-Fi hotspot, one like in a Starbucks or any other public place, doesn't matter. But maybe in front of you, the other side of the table, there might be an attacker, a hacker, using the same public Wi-Fi. Now, once they're connecting to Microsoft identified backend, which could be Azure, could be Office 365, but also Hotmail, Outlook, Xbox. So they're going to detect that from the public hotspot, public IP address, they're trying to get into the Microsoft network in a suspicious way. And within a couple of seconds, maybe up to a minute or so, we're going to detect the public IP and we're going to block it. Now, bringing that information into Azure Active Directory is what makes it secure, because we're going to block you being like the loyal corporate user trying to do your work from home or working from this public hotspot in this scenario. And we're going to block you from authenticating, but that's just for protecting your identity. Other options you have is, for example, multi-factor authentication. So what it means is that besides just logging on with your user account and password, we're going to ask you during the authentication to identify using something else, which could be a text message where you receive a verification code that you need to provide on top of your username and password, or using an authentication app. So on iOS, Android, you can install the Microsoft Azure AD authentication app. And during the authentication itself, it's going to ask you a confirmation. And extending that with, for example, a fingerprint reader on your phone, it means that you have 3 levels of authentication validation that you're actually Kazim, because you're the only one having your fingerprint. Yeah. And next to that, it's your phone. So it's connected to just one mobile phone number. And obviously, on top of that, we need to know that your login account is, I don't know, kazim@something.com, your password. And it's only after the first layer that the second one and the third one is coming in. So that's, in short, what is just part of Azure AD from an identity security. There's a lot more for corporate organizations. There's another interesting feature. It's called Conditional Access.
Okay.
There's an additional license fee that you need to pay for it because it brings in a lot of additional security, obviously. But it allows you to define policies like conditions that need to be validated before you can actually use your Azure account. So if you have, I don't know, a policy within the company that says that your client from which you connect to Exchange Online, for example, needs to be a Windows 10 machine. If you connect from iOS, from Android, then we can block that login session because you're in control of the policy. Or we could allow you to log on to email without multi-factor authentication. But once you connect to, I don't know, Microsoft Dynamics, where you have your corporate finance information, customer data, and so on, that from the same location, from the same client working from home nowadays, once you connect to more secret information within the corporate tools, that now we're going to enforce MFA to make sure, 100% sure, that it's not your daughter, your son, your wife, your partner connecting to your corporate email. That, I mean, it might already be a security risk, but that's still fine because it's just email, right? Yeah. But once you connect to other parts in the platform, that we're actually going to enforce the policies. And you're in control. Microsoft is not forcing anything. It's your corporate organization defining, we're going to block iOS, we're going to block Android, we're going to block non-up-to-date Windows 10 client, things like that. And it's only 3 features that I talked about, but I think in short, there's probably like 30 different Azure AD settings that you can activate to just make it as secure as possible.
Okay. And this is still talking about the marriage now between Azure and O365, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's quickly take a look at protection of our data in Azure. Many have this false notion that Azure Cloud is responsible for the protection of their data in the way that they need them to in the cloud. Can you better help us understand this? How does this really work? You know, is the protection of customers' data Microsoft's responsibility, or who is in charge of what?
Okay, yeah. So, well, in short, I think it's shared responsibilities, and I think you're 100% correct that a big misconception is that when you bring your data, your applications to the cloud like Azure or any else, then you don't have to worry about anything anymore. And that's totally not the case. So it's really shared responsibility. So for Azure, it means that Microsoft is taking responsibility for the security of the data center. So making sure that, for example, not just anyone could go to like the South African data centers and literally walk in and looking inside the data center. It's not really a possibility. But it also means that Microsoft is going to provide the base firewalling layer. So from a networking perspective, one of the features you have by design is Ddos Protection. So if you spin up a web app or a virtual machine that's running as a web server, or you enable remote desktop to do remote management, then there's Ddos Protection built in. So that's already something that comes out of the box. You don't need to do anything for that. Other options, and it's a little bit depending on the services you're using, is virtual machines. So you got the networking capabilities, everything you think of with firewalling security, anti-malware security, you can still manage all that in an Azure environment. So out of Microsoft, we're going to give you the data center capability, but you're still responsible for a lot of the traditional network security, anti-malware security. Now, if you move to a platform as a service, where you, for example, going to run a web application, but you're not running the virtual machine anymore, then obviously Microsoft is taking more responsibilities. We're going to make sure that the web app, imagine that it's a .NET app or a PHP or a Node app, then we're going to support the different frameworks, but we're not going to support all of them. So we're going to make sure that we support the latest versions, and it's typically like 2-3 versions backwards compatible. But anything else is our responsibility. So whenever we detect a vulnerability in, just an example, the .NET framework, if that would already happen, then it's our responsibility to make sure that our hosted environment is secure. The same for Office 365. So we run Exchange Online for you as a customer. So we're going to provide built-in email protection. And as a customer, you can just configure the settings, like tuning the knots a little bit, but you're not deploying any anti-malware tools. You're not deploying any email security. That's already provided out of the platform. And then the upper layer, if you want, is data encryption. So the network itself, when you connect from your local management station to Azure to do like day-to-day management, it's an encrypted connection. If you store data in Azure, like in a virtual machine, you have the option to encrypt the virtual disks. You have SQL Azure, another example. You can encrypt the database. So you move the database to the cloud, and next to that, you're going to encrypt it. And one of the prime security tools we offer there is Key Vault. So that's our what we call secret store. That's where you're going to define the encryption keys, the access keys, like local admin user account password scenarios, or connection strings that the web app connecting to a database, that you're not just storing the connection string clear text in a web config file, but keeping it in a secured place, and that would be Key Vault. Yeah. So a lot of built-in security, but quite important. You take some responsibility, and obviously out of Microsoft, we also have some responsibilities there.
Okay, Peter. I know you mentioned you've only got 20 minutes. Do you have time for me to squeeze in one more question before you go?
Sure, go ahead. No worries.
Okay. So quickly, let me ask. So where's the place for training in all of this? You know, if Office 365, for instance, is made up of some of the apps that many of us are already used to. So is there still a place for training? Do you think that organizations still need to invest in training for their staff to better leverage O365 and Azure?
Definitely think so. Well, first of all, it's my full-time job for the last 6-7 years and the last few months within Microsoft now. So I think that's proof number one that there's still a place for training. Now, obviously, the challenge is like, where do you find training content? One of the nice resources is out of Microsoft themselves. We offer Microsoft Learn. So if you go to microsoft.com/learn, that's our learning landing page. And from there, we offer training videos. We offer lab scenarios that you can go to get some hands-on experience. Next to that, we have a global network of learning providers, like certified learning partners, where you can sign up for online training, in-person training, with Microsoft certified trainers like myself, providing you the details, helping you through open questions, or even like a specific training for your organization. So I think the best investment as an organization today, when you move to cloud, is allocating at least a decent amount of budget for training, because it's an ongoing platform. Everything you know today is somehow getting outdated in 3 to 6 months from now. So it's like a ongoing process. Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge with us this afternoon, Peter. So I think I'm going to let you leave now, to get on back, on your job. But any last word from you, Peter, before finally we'll let you off?
Well, Azure, so first of all, would like to thank you for inviting me for this little call. And always nice to share some ideas and my view on the Microsoft Cloud world. Outside of that, I would say stay safe, stay healthy, and keep doing Microsoft Cloud technologies.
All right, thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you so much.
I can take it from here now. Thank you, Peter.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye, Peter. Right. So for the rest of us listening, if you have any questions you would like to ask, so you can ask now. So I'll see if I can get to respond to those questions real quick. We still have 10 minutes, so let me see if there's a question, one or two, and I can try to demo something on some of these features that Peter has mentioned real quick. So is there a question from anyone? Okay, so if there are no questions, so I'm just going to quickly try to demo. Peter mentioned in between his talk, while I was asking him what we can use to protect identities in the cloud, identities on Azure. And he did mention that MFA is one of those that we can use. He mentioned conditional access as well. So for time, I think I can quickly demo these two before we wrap up. So to demo this, I'm going to share my screen real quick. So if I come to portal.office365, portal.office.com, I beg your pardon. So you see, it brings us here. So Azure, Peter mentioned earlier that we have Azure Active Directory. So which is what connects, most of those functionalities that connect Office 365 with Azure, you find them within the Azure AD, Azure Active Directory. So the way we access the Azure AD from O365 landing page is from here. So by the way, you need to log in with what is known as a global administrator. So when you are logged into your your O365 portal as a global administrator, this admin icon shows up here. So I'm going to click on the admin icon real quick, and so that brings us here. And if I try to show all, there is a place for Active Directory. So I'll click on Active Directory. So this is my Azure Active Directory associated with my O365 account. So if I'm trying to enable multi-factor authentication, there's a noise from one of the participants. Kindly put yourself on mute, please, so that you don't interrupt. All right, so if I'm trying to enable a user or all of my users for multi-factor authentication, I can do that from here, right? So I can click on users. So you can see all of the users that I have here. Let's look up one of the users now. How about we choose this user account here, info, my info user. If I want, I can do for everyone, but I'm just choosing to go with one user now. I'll click on the user and there is a link here for multi-factor authentication. So I can click on multi-factor authentication. So it brings us to the multi-factor authentication page where I need to look up the account again. So the account again is, okay, this is the account right here. So I'll select the account and then enable the account for multi-factor authentication. So you can see here, I'll click on enable. This user has now been enabled for multi-factor authentication. But there are a few things that the user still need to do. You need to, one, enforce this, so I'm going to have to enforce it, enforce multi-factor authentication. And if you need to manage some additional settings concerning that, you can click on this manage user settings here. So the way you see things work, to conclude the last part of the setup, you are going to need to, let me try to do that real quick now. So I will come to portal.office, but I log out this account. Log out the account. I'm back to portal.office.com and try to log in as that account that I've enabled multi-factor authentication for. So in this case, it is info@lasucbt18.com. So I'll type in the password for that user. So you can see that it's requiring more information. It's telling us that now that more information is required. And once I click the next button, it's asking me, how do you want to, how do you want us to contact you? What is the additional security verification that you want to add? So in this case, I can make it a mobile app. I can make it an authentication phone. That is, when next I'm logging into my portal, my O365 portal, it means that typing in the username and the password isn't sufficient. So I will also, a message, if I'm choosing to go with a phone, a message will have to be sent to my phone. And once I type in that message that was sent to my phone, I will then be able to access my O365 landing page portal, right? So I can choose my country, choose a country of your choice. In this case, Nigeria. And put my phone number. Send the message. So I expect this message to be sent to my phone. I think the message just came in now. So I'll punch in the message here, the code that is. And verify. And click on done. And only then will I have access to my Office 365 landing page. So this is, how we set up MFA. All right then, so thank you very much for tuning in today. So let's do this again next week on the show, 1:30 it is next week. And we can continue the conversation also on social media. So it is Tech Talk Wednesday with Kazim on the, across the social media platform. And I'll also use this avenue to let us know that we have, another webinar coming up on Friday, also on Azure, and is going to be presented by Adnan Enric. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.